Next, we are going to plot the changes in the elevation, and we need to do that in stage 4. So we'll go up to the top of our panel menu, left click on the title bar for stage 7, and from that drop down list, we'll choose stage 4, terrain. Now we're in the right stage 4, plotting in our elevation changes, and you have 2 different directions you can go here. If you have a property that has lots of elevation changes and they go in multiple directions, you would go to your terrain tab, and there is a multiple option. And there's also a single option, which means that your slope is going in a single direction. In this case, in our property, we've got a single direction slope. We have a slope that goes down the front of the house, and we have a slope that goes up the back of the house. And they're going in the same direction. So single direction slope will be the best way to plot those elevation changes for this project. So go ahead and go to your terrain tab, click on single. You're going to see a split screen, and in the top screen, you're going to see your grid and a white dashed line going down the middle. That's called the slope direction line. That's where we plot the elevation changes. The little plus sign that you see attached to your cursor is the tool that you'll need for plotting in the elevation changes. You left click on the slope direction line, and then you apply the value for the point height. So I'm going to set the point height, the first point height, at the end of the driveway. And as I plot those points and apply the elevations, down in the bottom half of the screen, we're going to see a profile start to develop. And so we'll see a side view, a profile of what the changes in the elevation look like. Okay, so we're going to zoom in where that white dashed line intersects with the end of the driveway. I'm going to left click on that slope direction line, and I have my first point. It says 0 feet, and it should, because everything right now is at 0 feet, 0 elevation. I'm going to change that though. I want the slope to go down to -4 feet. So as soon as I plot that, insert that point, I go over to my point height value box, just above object settings in your terrain tab, point height. It's the only place where you can really plug a value in, so it's kind of easy to find it. Let's apply the value of -4 feet, 0 inches. And you see that value update on the point that you plotted in the top screen and the bottom screen. The second point is going to go where the farthest end of the house is on the front yard. So the slope direction line does not line up with that. So I'll just kind of find my site reference and come over to the slope direction line. I can left click and drag that up or down if I need to. Doesn't have to be exact, just in that general area at the front of the longest part of the house. I want that value to be 0 feet, 0 inches. I'll go over to my point height value box, change the value to 0 feet, 0 inches. And now I have a profile of a slope down in the bottom screen, going from 0 down to 4. Now, as we're working with the elevation changes, some of our terrain will remain level and some won't. Some will have a slope, some will be level. Basically, the foundation of the house in this project is very level, so we'll keep our terrain tight where it's supposed to be level, and we have a tool for that. Over in our panel menu, right above the point height value box, there's a terrain detail slider. One side says smooth and the other side says tight. Think of smooth as natural. Think of tight as level. So terrain is not level by nature, but we can tighten it and make it level using this tool. I can left click and drag that slider over to tight, and it will tighten my terrain. I just saw a slight change in the value in the terrain next to the value 0. All right, now I'm going to zoom out in the top screen, and I'm going to focus on the slope going up the back wall. So So I'm zooming in. I can zoom and pan both of my screens as needed. All right. I'm going to plot the next slope. This is the third slope. I'm going to plot that on the retaining wall. So just left click where the retaining wall is, where that white dotted line would intersect with the retaining wall. We want the elevation to be 0. Okay, look over at your point height box. Should default to 0, but it never hurts to just check it and make sure. And if we want the points in between both of the 0 elevations to be level and tight, I can tighten that terrain detail slider again. And then the next point is going to be where the slope direction line intersects with the back wall. Left click there. Now we're going to apply a height of 4 feet. So we're going to slope up to 4 feet where the back wall is. So I'm going to go to the point height value box and I'm going to increase that to 4 feet 0 inches. Now I'm going to zoom out and kind of pan over so you can see everything that we've done. We have a short slope going down the front of the house, and then we have a fairly short slope going up the back wall, creating a berm. And everything in between where the house is and the yard is, it's very nice and flat and level. Okay, we're going to go into the 3D environment and check out what we have in 3D. When we go into 3D, you're going to see a circle attached to your cursor, and that's part of a whole nother set of tools called the terrain tools. And we don't cover that in today's training. That is something that we cover in our terrain training class. So for now, we'll just kind of look around, navigate the way we normally would. I have a slope going up the back wall. I'm going to zoom out and rotate around to see what this front looks like. This is where we made some changes to our hardscapes. Remember when we drew our driveway, we set the driveway up to follow the slope of the terrain. And when we drew the walkway, we set it to not follow the terrain. We turned that setting off so you can see the difference. One's very flat, one aligns with the slope, and that would be ideal for this driveway scenario. Right, I'm going to go back into 2D. Our next objective is to create a planter on that back slope going up the back wall. That berm is going to have a big planter bed on it, and that is stage 9. Go over to your panel menu, left click on the title bar for the stage that you're in, and go down to stage 9 planters. Planters cut down into the surface of the shape that you draw them on. And you can only draw them on 2 surfaces. Planters work on terrain and they work on hardscape. If you wanted a planter bed, you would draw your planter on the terrain. If you wanted a freestanding planter, a hardscape planter, you draw the base of your planter as a hardscape, and then you come in and draw the planter shape on top of it. And the planter shape cuts down into the shape that you draw it on. And it works in a depth dynamic. So the things that we've been working with so far have been working with height, but now we're kind of switching over to depth here in this stage. How far down do you want that planter to cut into the terrain? And so that's what we're going to focus on. The planter that we're going to draw is going to be in between the retaining wall and the back wall. So I'm zooming into that area there. So it's a really big shape. The planter is going to cover the entire berm. Okay, so all the way across that slope from one end of the wall to the other, and then also reaching down to the retaining wall. So it's a really large rectangle. Go to the rectangle tool, left click on the rectangle tool, and I'm going to have you zoom in to the bottom right hand corner of the wall. Now we're going to go to the middle line of the wall because that one's on the grid, and that'll be a good site reference for us. The middle line on the wall. I'm going to left click and I'm going to come up 17 feet. Now I have to zoom and pan over, and I can zoom and pan while I'm creating this rectangle. Coming all the way over to the left, 94 feet. Left click. So 17 by 94. And we drew it in the planter stage. So it's going to basically, this shape is cutting down into the surface of the terrain as I described earlier, but it has a unique material. It has a plant-friendly material like dirt, mulch, something like that. Then when you go into materials, you can apply whatever material you want. Let's take a look at our planter in 3D. Right where we drew it on the slope. My planter defaulted to a depth of 1 inch. And for a planter bed, I think that's just fine. I'm just going to leave it at the defaulted 1 inch. Now let me deselect it up here using the circle with the line through it at the top of my screen. I can deselect my shape and see what that looks like. We might all have different materials. Mulch, dirt, sand, rock, something earth-like or plant-friendly. We're just designating that space with a material that's would be appropriate for planting. Now, one more thing we're going to do, we're going to add a curb to either side of the planter where the retaining wall is. So we'll kind of finish that off with a nice little curb. And we have a tool for that. So we'll go back into 2D. Select our planter. You have to have the planter selected if you want to insert the curb. And you'll notice in your planters tab, there's not very many settings here. We have depth and insert curb, but you won't see that insert curb unless you have your planter selected. Now, once you click on insert curb, it's really easy to install the curb. You just take it in the general vicinity. In this case, I'm just going to put it over here on the right side and left click and drop it in. Very easy to modify the length of the curb. I can use the endpoints to left click and drag them to the desired location. So that curb is going to kind of cover the area in between the retaining wall and the big wall. The settings for the curb are over in your panel menu, curb length, curb width. You can sink it down further. You can adjust the profile. I want to add another section of curb on the opposite side. So I'm going to deselect the curb that I inserted, reselect the planter, insert another curb, but this time I'm going to take it over to the left side and drop it in. Use my modification points to adjust the length and position. Okay, let's take a look at that in 3D. And we've got our curbs. If I zoom in really close, I can see what kind of profile I've got. If I double click on that curb, I can look at the settings. I can actually update the settings in the 3D environment. I can even open the library and see the different curb options that I have. That would be the profile button. Right now I have the mower profile. But if I double click on dome or standard, I see that I've got different options. Okay, I'm going to put the angled curb on both of mine. So I'm going to pan over to the other side. There I am. All right, let me get zoomed out so I can see what those look like. And I like to use this circle with the line through it at the top of my screen to deselect. And that really finishes that planter off nicely. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close my library up and go back into 2D. Next, we are going to be working with custom shapes and a pergola. And that's in the next stage. Stage 10 is where we work with custom shapes and pergolas. So we're going to go up to the top of our panel menu and left click on the next stage button. Now we're in the right stage to start working with our custom shapes. We just need to go down to our custom shape and pergola tab and click on shape. And that way we'll be set up to create our custom shape. The first shape I'm going to make is a ramp, and it's not maybe the most common shape that you would make, but it's a great illustration of how you can make one side of a custom shape greater in height than the other side. So that's unique to custom shapes. We're going to create our small ramp. It's a very simple shape. It's going to be located next to the wood deck. So you want to zoom into the wood deck. And more specifically, we're going to generate that shape from the top left-hand corner. It's a rectangle, so we'll use our rectangle tool. Click on the rectangle tool. Left-click at the top left-hand corner of the wood deck. Come up 5 feet and over to the right 4 feet and left-click. All right, go ahead and zoom in on that shape and switch to your Move tool. We need the Move tool because we're going to be selecting our shape, selecting independent points, and setting our height. Okay, so overall height of our custom shape is going to be in our panel menu right under the word shape. See where it says height? That's the overall height. We want that to be 6 inches to begin with. All right, so that's the overall height. Now, notice that there's a point height value box below that, but it's all grayed out. If I select a point on a custom shape, I can define the value of the height of that point independently. And that, again, that's just unique to custom shapes. You can't do this with any other shapes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that top 4-foot section. I'm going to left-click on the hollow point in the middle, and that will select that line segment independently. So I'm trying to affect the entire side, so I click on that midpoint. Now I go over to my panel menu. Notice the height box is grayed out. We're just working with the point height, and we're going to set the point height to 0 feet, 0 inches. Now, as soon as you start changing the values, you're going to notice that your shape is changing. You got some really cool graphics and these call out bubbles here telling you that you have set the top of this shape to 0 feet on both sides. And then at the bottom, we've got 6 inches. Okay, now I'm going to deselect that shape and we're going to go into 3D and take a look at that. It'll just have a random material on it, but you can see how that would be a very good ramp. If you needed ramp access to that wood deck, you can use that custom shape and modify the points independently as needed. So that's one asset of custom shapes. The other thing that you can do with custom shapes that you can't do with the other shapes that you draw is that you can rotate your custom shape. So if you have a unique detail on a shape, like an arc or a diagonal line, something that's not a right angle or flat, you can draw your custom shapes flat in 2D, and then in 3D you can rotate them upright. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a fire feature in between these two columns. It will have a base, and then we'll have a cap or a top on top. Kind of hard to describe exactly what it is, but it's kind of like an enclosure. And so we'll go into 2D and I'll show you how that's done. Let's just pan over to that patio area where the columns are and zoom in. We're still set up to draw a shape, custom shape. The first shape I'm going to draw is going to be the base. And I'm just drawing the shape and setting the height. And that's all I have to do. But I'll use some aligning tools that are really helpful. And we haven't done any aligning, so I want to make sure that you see how to do this. So really anywhere in this open grid space on this patio, we're going to make a 10-foot by 2-foot rectangle. Okay? Just activate your rectangle tool. Go anywhere in this space and just left click and come to the right 10 feet and down 2 feet. When you get that all squared away, left click. Now go over to your Move tool. Just switch to your Move tool. All right, now we're going to address the height of the shape. When you go to your Custom Shape and Pergola tab, you'll see height, the overall height. Set the height of this shape to 2 feet 0 inches. All right, we can put a lip style on a custom shape. I'm going to put a round lip style. Make that 3 inches. And then one other asset that's really important to pay attention to with custom shapes is the elevation. We can elevate custom shapes. So, it's a good idea to make sure that your auto elevation is on, or that you have the elevation set to what you need it to be set to. We want just the auto elevation on in our object settings. So we're going to be paying close attention to that. Now for the aligning. I want to align the shape that I drew with the 2 columns. I'm going to align and space those 3 shapes. So I have to have all 3 of those shapes selected. So I select the 10 by 2 shape, hold the Control key down, left click on one column and then the other column. As long as I have the Control key held down, I can add additional shapes to my original selection. Now I'm going over to my panel menu and scrolling down to my aligning tools. I'm aligning, I'll just say to the bottom. I think that will work really well. So all shapes will align to the bottom of the other shapes. So I'm going to click on bottom in my aligning options. And then the other setting that I will need to use is the distribute setting or spacing. We can distribute them vertically or horizontally. We want to click on horizontal. And so there's no measuring or anything like that. I can just use the aligning tools and the spacing tools to align that. So deselect those shapes and go into 3D and check your work. That's the base of my fire pit. Have that lip style on top. That's optional. You can take that on, put that on, or take it off if you would prefer. Now we'll create the shape that goes on top of this shape. I'll go back into 2D, and I'm going to kind of pan up so I have some grid space to work on. I like to draw this shape sort of out away from the other shapes. That's helpful both in 2D and in 3D, because when we go into 3D, we're going to be rotating the shape with the gizmo. All right, so you have to remember, okay, I know in advance that I'm going to be rotating this shape upright in the 3D environment. So I'm ready to draw the shape. Let me activate my line tool. All right, so anywhere in the grid space, just left click, come up 3 feet even, over to the right 10 feet, down 3 feet, over to the left 1 foot, up 2 feet, over to the left 8 feet, down 2 feet, and close your shape by coming to the left 1 foot. And I'll just pause there for a second so you can check your work and make sure you've got the same thing that I do. Remember, we're going to be rotating this shape upright in 3D. So this is flat, but it will change the orientation. We will change the orientation of this shape when we go into 3D using the gizmo. So we have to kind of think a little bit differently about this shape. The dynamics are a little bit different. Technically, we've already created the height of the shape. Once we rotate this upright, the height of the shape is going to be 3 feet. So what is the height value in the panel menu representing? That's the depth of the shape, how far back it goes. Or you could even call it the width of the shape if you wanted to. We're going to set that to 2 feet 0 inches. Okay, now on this lip style, I'm going to choose none. And in my object settings, I am going to elevate this up where I can work with it. Okay, so I don't want it flat on the ground. I want it up where I can rotate it. So I'm going to set a specific elevation. When I want to set a specific elevation, I go down to object settings and I turn my auto elevation off. When you turn auto elevation off, you have control of the elevation. set the elevation to 3 feet 6 inches. All right, now I'm going to leave my shape selected in 2D, and I'm going to go into 3D, and I will see my shape kind of floating up in the air. I'll rotate that upright using the gizmo, and then I'll move it over into the space above the base of the fire pit. All right, so we want to put the gizmo in rotate mode. It's in move mode. You know, you can kind of remember what all the gizmo does when you look over in your toolbar and see what tools are grayed out and what tools are not grayed out. So you see I've got the move, rotate, and scale. Those are all modalities that I can use on the gizmo. I can be in move mode, rotate mode, or scale mode. I'm going to click on rotate. Now I've kind of navigated my way so that I'm looking at this from a side perspective. And that's helpful because it's the red arrow that's going to rotate this in the right direction. So how you rotate is take your cursor over the red arrow. See how it highlights a brighter color red? Hold down your left mouse button and move your mouse to the left. And that shape is going to rotate, and it snaps every 45 degrees. I'll just stop when I get to that vertical orientation. All right, now it's easier to move this into the right position if I go back into 2D. So that's what we'll do. We'll go back into 2D. Looks like I still have my rotate tool. I better go over to my move tool and click on that so I can left click and drag this on top of the base. I'm going to zoom in and make sure I've got everything really nice and aligned. If I zoom in really close, I can get that aligned perfectly. Might as well. All right, we'll take one more look at that in 3D. We should have that custom fire feature. We have fire in our items library, so we'll be putting some fire in that fire feature. Okay, so a couple of examples of custom shapes. Let's go back into 2D. So now that our custom shapes are complete, we're going to work on our pergola. You want to make sure that you don't have anything selected. So with your move tool, kind of click away from all of your shapes and then go over to your custom shape and pergola tab and click on pergola. You'll see a diagram of a pergola, a picture of a pergola, an interactive diagram. We'll be using that to make any modifications. But we will use our rectangle tool to create our pergola now that we're set up to make a pergola. And our site reference for creating the pergola is going to be the top right-hand corner of the kitchen island. So we're all set up. Go over to your tools and activate your rectangle tool. Go to the top right-hand corner of the kitchen island, left-click there, and come over to the left 26 feet. And then down 18 feet. So a 26 by 18 foot shape. Left click to complete the pergola. While the pergola is still selected, go over to your custom shape and pergola tab and go to the height box. We're going to set the height of our pergola to 10 feet 0 inches. Then if you leave your pergola selected in 2D and you go into 3D, it will be selected in 3D and you'll be able to make any modifications or revisions that you need to make in 3D and it will update automatically. So let's leave our pergola selected and go into 3D. It's going to be highlighted red. You're going to see the gizmo, but it's the white gizmo because we cannot move this pergola in the 3D environment, but we can make changes. This interactive diagram over here kind of puts the pergola in different pieces. And when you click on the different pieces of the pergola, it's kind of like layers, like the very top layer or the slats. So you hover your cursor over the slats and you'll see a little call out and you click on that section and you'll see a list of settings so that you can determine and customize the size of your slats, spacing, profile, any of those settings that you need to apply or adjust. Then you have the layer below that, which are the rafters. When you click on the rafters, you get the settings for the rafters. So you can really customize this and make it look like what you want it to look like, what you would build or what you would install. So you can make edits over here using this interactive picture diagram. You can also double click on any of the actual pieces in the 3D environment. So like, for example, if I wanted to zoom in and I wanted to omit or delete something, I can double click on it, select it, and delete it. In this case, the Pergola has a house ledger. So technically, I don't need this back set of rafter supports and columns. I can double click on the rafter support, and because the columns are attached to the rafter support, when I delete it, those will be deleted, and I'll open this space up quite a bit. So that would be one revision that you could make. I'm going to go up and just click on the trash can icon. Okay, so lots of ways that you can customize the Pergola. One more thing that I might do is make the columns a little bit bigger. The thickness of the columns can be increased to 8 inches, whatever you would want that to be set to. All right, so that's it for the Pergola. I'm going to go back into 2D. Now we're going to draw our pool, and we need to go to the right stage to do that. We want to go to stage 5. Go up to the top of your panel menu and left click on the title bar. Then go down to stage 5 pools. The pool is going to be adjacent to the left side of the wood deck. Okay, so that's going to be our site reference. We'll use the rectangle tool. The pool is 32 feet by 14 feet. And we have to kind of understand the way the pool is drawn. When you draw the pool, you're actually drawing the inside pool wall. And then there's an additional 1 foot of coping that the system automatically applies. That's the defaulted settings for the pool. So we'll keep that in mind when we draw the pool and use our site reference, which is the wood deck. Zoom in to the top left-hand corner of the wood deck. Now, activate your rectangle tool. Go to the top left-hand corner, but don't click there. We're going to offset 1 foot using the grid lines as a measuring tool. So just come from the corner, top left-hand corner of the wood deck, come diagonally down 1 foot or 1 grid line, and that'll account for the 1 foot of coping that's going to generate automatically. All right, so I'm just going to left click, and I'm going to extend my rectangle guide to the left 32 feet and then down 14 feet. Kind of have to hold everything steady, check and make sure you've got the right dimensions, and left click. See, that outer line represents that coping, that 1 foot of coping that I was talking about. So you'll see the line that you drew, and then you'll see a line on the outside representing the coping. Let's take a look at our pool settings in our panel menu. The height of the pool is defaulted to 0 feet, 0 inches. We'll leave that setting in place. The coping is defaulted to a 1 foot coping. We talked about that. You can always increase that or decrease that if you need to. The lip style, you have your drop-down list of different lip styles that you can choose from. There is an option down at the bottom for a custom lip style. If you left click on custom, you'll have a custom profile button that when you click on it, the library opens and you have 5 additional lip styles. We recently added those, and those are available in the library. If you choose one of these, you just double click on it to select it. Okay, I'll go ahead and close my library. You can choose whatever lip style you want. The lip height can be adjusted. I'm defaulting to a 3-inch lip height, but I want a 2.5-inch lip height. Water level is 3 inches. Height is, waterline tile height usually defaults to 6 inches. Mine didn't, so I'm going to adjust that. That's going to be a 6-inch waterline tile height. All right, the next thing we have to look at with the pool is the pool slope. But let's go into 3D and then we'll come back and address that. Go into 3D. I'm going to try and look at this from the homeowner's perspective. There we go. From that angle, I'll have to be careful not to back into the house. Okay, the pool looks great, but I want the shallow end to be over here by the wood deck, and I want the deep end to be at the opposite side. So we'll address that using our pool slope settings back in 2D. All right, go back into 2D. You have to have your pool selected to set up your pool slope options. With your pool selected, over in your pool slope little window here, you have two choices. If your pool slope goes in multiple directions, we've got that setting. If your pool slope goes in a single direction, we've got that option too. I would say probably the single direction slope is the one that's probably more common. So that's what we're going to work with today. When you click on single, you have a button to the right that says Edit Slope. So you make your choice, click on Edit Slope, and you have a split screen. Similar to the setup in the terrain stage where you have your grid in the top half of your screen and you have your profile down in the bottom half of your screen. Now, all we need to do is to reset the depth down in the bottom screen. So very simple. All you need to do is select the point that you want to change the depth of. So I go over to the right-hand side and left-click on the 6-foot depth. Now in my pool slope settings, my point height value box is going to light up, and I'm going to change that to 3 feet 6 inches. There we go. Go in the right direction now. 3 feet 6 inches is the new depth on the right-hand side. And I'm going to go over to the left-hand side and left-click. Select the 3-foot depth. Go over to my pool slope settings. Point height value box says 3 feet, but I'm going to change that to 5 feet 6 inches. Very simple to adjust the pool depths. Now, if you wanted to add more points, you can left-click on the slope direction line, and that inserts more points. Left-clicking inserts additional points. Right-clicking removes points. So you can have multiple points, not a problem. You just have to left-click and insert those points and apply the point height. This is going to be our slope for today. So just check your work with mine. Make sure you have the same thing that I do. All right, let's go ahead and go into 3D and check out this new pool slope setting. Okay, looks good. Next thing we're going to do is to work with our spa. So I'm going to need to be in the stage for spas and water features. That's stage 6. So go up to the top of your panel menu, left click on the title bar, go down to stage 6, spas and water features. Left click on that. So the spa is going to be a rectangular spa on the left side of the pool. All right, so the far end of the pool on the left side will create an 8-foot by 14-foot spa shape. So activate your rectangle tool. We're going to start at the top left-hand corner of the pool, and we'll use the pool wall, not the coping, as our site reference. Left-click there. Come to the left 8 feet, down 14 feet. Left click. Okay, I'm going to make one quick revision. I want to move the left side 14-foot vertical line segment over to the left 1 foot. I can make that modification using my Move tool. Left click on your Move tool. Go to that vertical 14-foot section on the right-hand side. And if you left click on the midpoint, you can isolate that line segment independently and drag it over to the left 1 foot. Next, I'm going to look over in my panel menu and check the height and depth of my pool, or spa, I should say. Look over at your spa and water features tab. The height defaults to 1 foot. We can change that. I'm going to make it 9 inches. The depth I'm going to leave at 3 feet. The coping is going to be a 1 foot coping, same default that I saw on the pool. Lip style will default to whatever lip style we chose for the pool. And the water level, water line tile, all of that will default to the same settings that we put on the pool. Okay, let's take a look at our spa in 3D. All right. So that's the spa. At the end of the pool, we're going to add a tiered spillover next. So the tiered spillover will go on that same side of the spa that we modified, that 14-foot section. Obviously, that's a good placement for it because we're going to spill over into the pool. So a tiered spillover is our next objective. And we're in the right stage. You have to be in the stage where you want to apply the water feature to the body of water that you're selecting. So if you want to add a spillover to a spa, you have to be in the spa stage. If you want to add a water feature to the pool, you have to be in the pool stage. So all we need to do is select our spa and then look over at our spa and water features again. Down at the very bottom, there's a button that says Insert Spillover. Click on that. Bring your spillover and just kind of center it on the right side of the spa. It kind of snaps into place there. Left click and drop it in. Now go down to your object settings. Because we have a spillover inserted and selected, we have spillover options. What kind of spillover do we want? Let's go with tiered. Click on tiered spillover. Mine defaulted to tiered. Probably the last thing that the last water feature that I worked with was a tiered spillover. Then we have our general spillover settings. Let's set the length of our spillover to 8 feet 0 inches. Nice big spillover. Lip style I'm going to set to none, so there won't be any lip style. Okay, let's look at our tiered spillover settings. Step height, 3 inches. Step count, 3. I think that'll be the only thing we'll address today. Just make sure that your water flow is on, or you'll have a pretty non-productive spillover. We want that water flow on. All right, let's go into 3D and take a look at that spillover. Looks great. All right, let's go back into 2D. So the next thing we have to do is to go to steps and benches, and that's stage 8. That's the stage where you add steps and benches to your pool and your spa. So go to the top of the panel menu, left click on the title bar, go down to stage 8, steps and benches. Left click on that. So you can draw your steps and benches in, any tanning ledges, basically any shape or surface that's inside the body of water. We're going to let the system make our steps for us using the Auto Pool Steps Builder. It is a feature that works a lot like the Create Staircase feature that we worked with back in Hardscapes. So this will be kind of very similar to that tool. So in your steps and benches tab over here, everything's kind of grayed out because we don't have anything selected or even created. But we have a button here, big Auto Pool Steps button. You can't miss it. The way the Auto Pool Steps Builder works is the system is going to, when you click on that, the system's going to give you a little generic little shape. It's a step. You're going to attach it to the shape that you want steps from. So we're going to attach this to the right side of the pool. See how it snaps on? It should kind of conform to the shape and snap on. Then when you left click and drop it in, it calculates how many steps are needed to get from the pool down to the floor. Okay, so it's automatic, calculates the steps for you. It's not exactly the right configuration. We want wider steps. We want the steps to stretch all the way across the pool, the width of the pool. And we can do that using the modification points on the steps. Now, there are 4, and the outer 2 points work differently than the 2 points that are touching the 2 shapes or touching the shape. The outer points move independently. So if I left click, I can drag them, but that's not really what I want to do. I want to stretch this whole side up so that it's even with the top of the pool. I use the points that are touching the shape for that. I left click and drag that up. And then the bottom one, I left click and drag that down. Makes it really, really fast and easy to make those shapes fit into your space. All right, so now they're stretched across the pool just like I want them. But let's take a look at our step options in the panel menu. All right, step options. First thing that you're going to see, what kind of shapes do you want? Standard normal shapes or fancy wedding cake shapes? We just want normal steps. What are the width of the steps? We want those to be 1 foot 6 inches. So if you don't have that value, change the value to 1 foot 6 inches. That's the distance across the top. So that would be kind of like the tread. Down below that, the value that you're going to see is the height. And that represents the rise of your steps. So how far down or how far up in between each step is. We're going to set ours to 1 foot 0 inches, but when you're working on your own, you can set that to whatever you want it to be. And you probably want to set it to how you build your steps. Okay, so that will vary for each builder. Step count is going to be 3. And everything looks really good. I'm pretty happy with those steps, but I have an idea. What if I want the very top step to be really wide and make it more of a shelf, create a larger surface area? I can actually stretch that top shelf or any of these steps using the midpoint on the steps. So on that very first step, there is a midpoint adjacent to that step. If I left click on that, I can drag it and stretch it. And you can see as I'm moving it, I have a little ruler that's going with me telling me how far I'm stretching it. I want to stretch that 6 feet. Go ahead and stretch that top step and make it quite a bit wider. All right. The next thing that we need to do is to convert these steps to steps and benches. Think of it like this, guys. This is an auto pool steps builder. Right now, it's not cataloged as a step or a bench. And we need that to be cataloged as steps and benches so that it goes into the correct category for our data. So very important step here is once you've got those steps looking the way that you want them to, you have the width and the height and the step count, everything's done. Go down to the bottom and click on Convert to Steps. All right. Now, each one of these steps is an independent shape. I can click on it, select it. In fact, if I look up in my steps and benches, I'll see a depth value. That's measuring how far down each one of these steps is from the top of the pool. And so we can set those to each 1 foot down. So the first step, 1 foot down from the top of the coping. Second one, 2 feet down from the top of the coping. Oh, that's the third one. Let's go 3 feet on that one. Let me click the second one. Sometimes it's hard to select shapes when you've got them sharing space with another shape. So I had to kind of backtrack here. The depth on the second step is going to be 2. So what I did was I have the first step. Let me just go back over that again. Depth at 1 foot. The second step. There we go. I got the second step. Depth of 2 feet. Third step. Depth of 3 feet. So we just go down 1 foot each time we step down. Let's take a look at that in 3D. I think that looks great. You know, these steps can be modified independently as well. You can add trim tile. You can determine in your panel menu how rounded you want the radius to be. So if that edge, that exposed edge needs to be more rounded, you can increase the radius. If you want to add trim tile, you can add a trim tile and determine the thickness of the trim tile. So you can really customize these steps. Pretty fast and easy. I'm going to go ahead and turn my trim tile off. You can put trim tile on yours if you like. So those steps look great. Now I'm ready to create a bench over here in my spa. And I'm going to let that Auto Pool Steps Builder do that work for me. So I'm going to go back into 2D and focus on that spa. Zoom into the spa area. So what we do when we're making benches and using the Auto Pool Steps Builder is we let the Auto Pool Steps Builder determine how many steps we need, but then we kind of trick the system a little bit and we only set the step count to 1. And it will be a bench. So we're kind of just tricking the system a little bit and changing the settings and making it look like what we need it to look like. We want it to look like a bench. And why not let the Auto Pool Steps Builder do the work for us? All right, I'll show you how we work with that. Click on Auto Pool Steps. Bring your cursor over. There's my little generic shape. I'm going to attach it to the left side of the spa. Really, you could attach it anywhere. It doesn't matter where, but you do have to attach it to the side somewhere on the spa. And then we'll wrap it around the entire interior of the spa. But remember, I only want a bench and not steps. So one of the important things to do here is to go over to your step options. Normal standard steps. Width is 1 foot 6 inches. Height doesn't really apply because, well, we don't really have a rise here. But step count is the value that I want to change. I want to set that to 1. 1 bench. That's what I want. All right. Now we'll use the blue points that are touching the shape to drag and stretch it. Now, if you watch my screen for a second, it gets a little tricky and looks kind of funny when you take this and you drag it down and turn the corner and come around. See how it turned red just for a minute? It's kind of regrouping. It's kind of trying to figure out what we're doing here. But I just keep going. I'm just going to keep stretching and dragging that around until it connects to the opposite side. Okay, it's actually very easy. Just, if you know what to expect, those red lines are not bad. Doesn't mean anything bad is happening. You're not breaking your shape. Just a little regrouping. Now what we need to do, convert to steps. This is a step builder, not a step or a bench. It's not cataloged correctly until we convert. So basically, good rule of thumb, every time you use the Auto Pool Steps Builder, convert, go down to the bottom. The last thing that you have down at the bottom is convert to steps. And when you click on that, you can select your shape, see the dimensions, and see the settings in your steps and benches. Depth would be, I'll try a 1 foot 6 inch depth there. See what that looks like in 3D. All of the same settings will apply that we talked about, trim tile and rounded edges and things like that. But I think it looks great. Okay, and I didn't have to draw anything. I just let that Auto Pool Steps Builder do the work for me, and I just had to kind of trick the system a little bit and apply different values, and I've got a bench. All right, so steps and benches are complete. Let's go back into 2D.